Welcome to Portfolio Builders Club. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin and Microstrategy. So Bitcoin has been on a really big move and crypto has overall. So we're going to look at the total market cap for crypto. So we are above the all-time high for money invested into the crypto market. So it was about $3 trillion, and now we're up above that around $3.19 trillion invested in crypto overall. And that indicates that new money or more money is in that market than has ever been in the market before, and there's just new gained interest in it. And this is coinciding with the run up to $90,000 and $100,000 Bitcoin. So let's take a look at Bitcoin. As we look at Bitcoin, you'll see that it did make that run all the way up, almost got to 100,000, just turned down just short of 100,000. And sort of came down a bit here. So the question really right now is, will it ever really pass 100,000, or is this the end of a particular run? Right now, we are still bullish because of all of our moving averages are pointing upward. We have a lot of momentum to the upside. This pullback may come down to around the 90,000 level and then maybe push back up. But if it can reverse even sooner than that, that would be also an opportunity for it to go ahead and make it above the 100,000. So the next push, if that happens, should be the push to take it over 100,000. But right now, you got a lot of whales that are up here selling, just trying to beat the rush, because once we get to 100,000, there's probably going to be a lot of people selling just as a round number to sell it. And there are going to be folks who've been holding for a long time who are going to be looking to liquidate part of their holdings, maybe a percentage of it, 25%, 20%, 10%, or maybe even higher at that particular level. So as they sell off to go ahead and capture their profits, if we need more people to come into the market and more money to go into Bitcoin specifically in order to push that back up above 100K. So if it does go back up and possibly breach 100K, of course, that's going to be a major milestone. It's going to make all your news networks. It's going to make all your social media, and that should increase the interest in the asset as we go forward. So we'll have to watch and kind of see what happens with that. We are approaching the last month of the year as well. So some investors may be waiting to see what's going to happen in the new year, either to sell or to buy as well. But we would anticipate that we're going to have a lot of volatility now that we're up near this $100,000 level. And we'll have to continue to watch sort of what happens with that. Let's take a look at futures. So futures relatively runs a little bit higher. With futures, the future price did break into the $100,000 level, but it did not maintain that level at all. So again, on the futures side, and this is a micro Bitcoin futures here, we can see that it did hit the $100,000 level and had sort of pulled back. We would expect at least another attempt at that at some point, either once we hit 90,000 again and bounce back up, or once we hit this moving average as it continues to move up and then sort of push back up and try that one more time. But we'll have to continue to watch and see what happens there. So there is a stock that many people are interested in that's related to Bitcoin because they have obtained quite a few Bitcoin, and that's part of their business model to obtain Bitcoin and offer bonds for investors to invest in Bitcoin, as well as folks are buying the stock as well. And then there's some derivatives that have been created off of this particular company, and that company would be Microstrategy Incorporated. So Microstrategy is a company that has acquired quite a few Bitcoin. As you see here today, it's showing that they acquired 55,500 additional Bitcoin, increasing their total to 386,700 Bitcoin. And the analysts have the rating looking at an increase our price target to $600. And right now we're at 403, so that's quite a bit of an increase as well, just on this particular asset. As we look at the financial side of things, you'll notice that the financials don't look the best. The earnings here has not beat earnings, and you're getting more of a separation on earnings on that third quarter of this year. And then we also look at the income, and the income statement is showing that they're having quite a few losses, and that losses sort of increased here as well. But as they acquire Bitcoin, and Bitcoin being the driver, that Bitcoin, the expectation that it'll be worth more in the future than today, the idea is that all this will turn around and it'll exponentially be better for the organization because they've acquired Bitcoin at such low prices overall. So one of the other things you'll note with MicroStrategy as we look into the owner or the founders here, rather, it would be Michael Saylor. So you'll see him on social media, see him on the news and that sort of thing, talking about Bitcoin and his organization quite a bit. So that's pumping more and more interest into this particular asset. Since September this year, the price has gone up 300%. This is in the asset here. So that is pretty major move up that has finally occurred for this organization. Now, there are some 2x leverage ETFs associated with MicroStrategy. There's MSTU, and there's also MSTZ, which is the inverse. So these are relatively new, but they do offer 2x leverage. So you're going to see roughly 2 times the movement of the underlying asset. So as we look here on TradingView, it just sort of explains that this is leverage exposure equivalent to 200% of the fund's net assets. So again, that's going to be roughly 2 times the value or gain and loss of MicroStrategy. So you see MicroStrategy was down 4% today, and this 2x leverage ETF was down 10%, almost 11% there. So you will see that you have some difference in the price as well. So like even on this downside for MSTZ, it is down 7%. It's not quite the 8.6 that you might expect, but you'll see that relatively is 2x or 2 times the difference of the underlying, whether it's up or down. But one of the things this does allow you to short using the MSTZ, which is the inverse, and long MSTR 2x leverage with MSTU. So looking at MSTU, and you'll see roughly, since it was relatively new, you're going to expect some sort of fluctuation early on with it. But, looking from here around, just after September, you're looking at about 700% move that has occurred in this particular asset. So if you had this and you were holding this asset, you would have had this amount of a return. Again, you can have just as much of a loss as well. So depending on which side of the market you think things are going to be on, you can look at that and sort of determine what's going on. So if we were to go from, I guess about October down, so this has been 100% loss, or 96% loss at this particular point if you were on this side all of this particular time. But with leverage ETFs, you always want to consider the best method is just not to hold it very long. It's just really for short-term investments, but it does help you to hold the asset via, through a particular swing. So if you have a down swing or something like that, as long as you're holding the asset, you should be fine if it then recovers and continues on. But otherwise, you are taking twice as much of a loss, on that downswing if you're not willing to hold the asset beyond that particular point. So everyone has to be very careful with leverage assets, particularly with something like MicroStrategy, which is based on Bitcoin, where you've seen even just in the underlying stock itself, you've seen a 300% run, but once you get into these leverage assets, you're going to be moving much faster, but you can have just as much of a gain and just as much of a loss. But just wanted to bring these to your attention. MicroStrategy, Bitcoin, you're going to hear those 2 names as Bitcoin makes history here if it does hit 100,000. So we'll just continue to watch the markets. All right. Thanks for joining Portfolio Builders Club.